Hey guys, what's up? In this tutorial, I want to go over how you can scrape React-based websites and applications like Instagram with a library called Puppeteer that will allow us to basically just control the browser and do things like enter text input, click on buttons, go to certain pages, go to URLs, all with JavaScript. So basically, some context for this video is I was trying to just figure out a way that I could scrape Instagram. And I was trying to use Cheerio. And when I was using Cheerio, I noticed that the response that I was getting when I attempted to run the scripting and target specific HTML, I wasn't getting the HTML elements and final contents that I assumed I would be getting. And the reason for that is because with React-based applications, the HTML that we see as users, that you see, in the console when you're looking around and you're looking at the DOM, in order for that to actually be generated and for that to get presented on the website, React has to run some JavaScript-related code and whatever is like put into their library to actually generate that final HTML. And that's something that Puppeteer solves for us. So Puppeteer is going to allow us to just be able to get the actual final HTML that the JavaScript code is generating on the React-based side in the client when we attempt to fetch it from the server. So right here, basically the entire video is just, I'm going to show you how you can get people's followers and the people that they're following, all with just their account name. So right here, this is my Instagram account, RMBHH. I'm going to shamelessly plug that there. Definitely follow me if you want to. So what you're going to see here is we're going to create this simple input box. You're going to click this button, and you're going to notice that two windows open, and that's all with Puppeteer. And you're going to see some clicking and some navigating around the web page. I'm not doing it. It's all from this like really simple script that we're going to put together, and we're going to extract and crawl through some information and extract it, and then put it into our app so that we can do something with it. So I'm going to click submit. Let's go ahead and see how this works, and then we'll get to start coding. So right here, as you can see, we're going to first log into the account. This does require that you have an Instagram account for it to work like this, but don't worry, I created a dummy account that everyone can use together in case you don't have an Instagram. So right here, basically, you can see I went straight to the followers, and after this, it's going to go to the following. And all it's going to do is, scrape through all this HTML, save this information, and then allow us to return that to our React application so that we can display it in a meaningful way. So we're going to let it do its thing. It takes a little bit of time because we kind of brute forced it. And when it's done, we'll come back. I've noticed as I was recording this video, I just got to the end of finishing it all up, that I did a really bad job of explaining this API and kind of giving a fair introduction to it. So I just wanted to take some time just to go through some of the main methods that we're going to be looking at while we use this library to web scrape Instagram. So this is basically, you can think of it as like an extension of jQuery. It does a lot of other things as well, obviously being able to kind of like automate the way that you control the browser and giving you this really nice exposed API to simulate like button clicks and go to pages, type in input text and stuff like that. I think a lot of people use this as like a test suite for automation and stuff as well. But anyway, this is just a very like simplified markdown version of what we're going to be using it for. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to obviously import. We're going to launch Puppeteer so that we actually have a way to interface with the browser. We're going to access a page by creating a new page, making it go to a specific URL, do some other actions in between, and then close the browser. And that's how the API works. These are the main methods we're going to be using. We're going to be using the $, which is just document.querySelector with jQuery, right? So you give it a HTML element path, and it's going to return a promise that's going to link us with that specific matched elements with whatever path we give it, right? So if we're looking for a button with this specific HTML path, it's going to give us a promise that has a value with that specific node. The next one we're going to use is the double $selector. So this is document query selector all. Again, all of these return promises, so you're going to see a bunch of awaits in our code. And what this does is it simulates query selector all with jQuery, and it's going to return us a array with a list of all of the elements that match that specific HTML path. In addition to that, we're going to be using, let's see, we use the star X. So this just gives an expression, right? So if we're looking for a button that has a specific, like layer of text within it, right? So like a submit button. Or if we're looking for a tag with a specific, like text inside of it, or href attribute, something like that. So that gives us a nice way to interact with elements on a different level. And then the last thing that we're going to look at, so we're going to do like clicks, so to like simulate clicks and stuff like that, it's going to be a good one. The last one I wanted us to look at is evaluate. And so this is a function that is going to basically allow us to get the actual, like contents of the HTML element that we get with the query selector and interact with it in some way. So if we look right here, it just says function to be evaluated. It's going to return a promise and we'll wait for the promise, blah, blah, blah. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to get some like HTML node back, right, when we run those $ and $$ functions. And we're going to use evaluate to actually, like interact with that HTML in some way, whether that be like clicking on it or like iterating over it and getting like the actual, like contents of the HTML node, like the text or the href or the title or like whatever like contents we're looking at for specific elements like hrefs and buttons and stuff like that. Okay, and then the next thing I wanted to go over is just kind of like how I built this together. So if you look at this right here, Instagram, I kind of wanted to show you just how like some of the paths and things work. So what I did to try to figure out like how to target these elements and get the path for all of the functions you're going to see, like the elements and stuff. This one right here, you can see that it's like really simple because it's just an input, and I can actually target it by the name of the input. So that's going to be some of the first things that we do. So right here, we're going to like log in, whatever. And then after we log in, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to see like, okay, what are the ways that we can get followers and following? And the way that we can do that, if we look at my following, you can see that there is kind of like this region that contains a list, right, with all of the like list items within it. So we have, like this container right here for a user, a user, a user, and a user. And the way that we worked with this, right, was we just wanted to look at the HTML for all of this so that we could actually define a path. And, I'm not going to like walk through it right here, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of where I was getting the like nested like div routes and paths to the elements in case a lot of that looked like gibberish to you. And the main things that we're looking for is to get the actual image, so this image right here, and then the person's username, which is somewhere within here. Yeah, so it's like nested deep down there. Okay, so I hope that explains everything a little bit. If you need to see the Puppeteer documentation and you're curious about more, you can go to this URL right here, pptr.dev. All right, so without further ado, now we're going to actually get coding for real. All right, so we're all set to go. As you can see, we got some information back. So we got the followers that I have, who I'm following, who is not following me back, and then who I'm not following. So this is all the information that we're going to scroll through. It's basically just giving us a list of all of the users so that we have some data and we can display it in a meaningful way. So that kind of wraps up over the overview. So why don't we get to coding and get to the fun stuff. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, as usual, is we're going to start with the Webpack starter on my GitHub. So I'll put this link in the description. Just go there. We'll copy and paste it. So we're going to just quick clone this, and we'll call it Instagram Scraper. Okay, super easy, super fast. It's really lightweight, and it's just a simple, basically React. What is that called? Create React app that we can start with. that's pretty useful. So why don't we open up Visual Studio Code? We got our project. Oh, this is not my project. Hold on. CD into Instagram Scraper, and then we're going to open it. Okay, perfect. So now we have our starting point. So the first thing that we're going to do before anything is we need to npm install Puppeteer. So let's open up our command line, our terminal, and do npm install Puppeteer. So this is going to be the web scraping library that we use in order to get that server-side React, or that client-side React HTML. So this is going to take a little long time because it does need to download Chrome and Chromium. So if you see, like a long download time, then that's why. So let's just let this do its thing. We'll come back. All right, perfect. So we have Puppeteer installed. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start with our script. So right here, this is just the Express server that's going to allow us to extend API endpoints and then generate the Webpack build that we have currently set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a new file, and we're going to call it script.js, and we're going to start coding. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take in Puppeteer. So let's just import that library. Next thing we're going to do is we're just going to create a function called script, and it's going to take in a username. So whenever, basically the way that this works is whenever anyone clicks that submit button and enters in a username, this script is going to be called on our back end. And we're going to set up like an API endpoint and all that good stuff later. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable browser, and we're going to use the Puppeteer launch command. Now what this does is it's just going to initialize a browsing context for us, and we're going to launch it in incognito. This actually doesn't really even matter right now, but I like to have it in incognito because I was running into some trouble previously where it was like remembering like the last browsing session, but that doesn't really matter. So we're just going to send it in an object of, like options. So args, you can omit this if you want, but I would just keep it there. And then headless just means, do you want to see the actual window or not? So I do want to see the window, so I'm going to set this to false. If you don't want to see the window, you just want it to run silently in the background, then you can just do headless true, which is what it defaults to. So now that we're launching Puppeteer and it's got that instance up, we're going to actually create a page. So we're going to do browser.newPage, and this is going to create an actual window for us to open up with. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to use page.goto. Now, goto is just a function that requires a URL, and all it's going to do is it's going to go exactly to that URL in the browsing window. So I'm just going to copy and paste the page that we want to go to, which is the Instagram login page. And then it also takes in a second argument that's an object with some specs. And the one that we want to do is network idle 2, which just means, hey, I just want you to wait around a little bit after you log in, after you go to that page, so that we can wait for the HTML to load. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is we want to do page.type. So we're interacting with the page that is at this URL, right? And now we want to type in some text into the username and the password boxes. So what we're going to do is we're just going to target that HTML element the same way that we would with jQuery. So I'm just saying the input tag, and then I want the name to be equal to username. And we're going to use my dummy account right here. So it's Jesse James, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I almost did my account, so I'm glad that I backspace right there. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing for the input password. So I know that everyone's going to be using the same one, and anyone could change this, but I don't think it's really going to matter. Just because this is such a dummy account, I can't really expect anyone to try to change it or mess around with it. So we have that, and then we're going to set a delay as the third argument. So the third argument is an object and you can add some additional, like options in there, but we want to delay it for, I think this is like 20 milliseconds or something like that. So we have the username, we have the password. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to do page.click. So you can already see, like how easy it is to actually use this library. So that's pretty cool. I mean, basically it's just an extension of jQuery where, just like Cheerios, right? Except it lets you do a lot more, and you can also control the browser and, like simulate clicks. And again, it's gonna actually allow us to fetch that server-side HTML or that client-side HTML that React generates. So the last thing we're going to do for that, so after you click the submit button, we're going to wait for, I think that's 5 seconds, so that the next page can load appropriately. So one thing, I'm not sure if you caught it when the like script was running beforehand, but there are sometimes this like notification window or like pop-up. And basically we want to just make that button go away. We're going to click no or yes every time, just because it doesn't really matter. I think it's if you like want to stay signed in or something. I don't even know. But basically we just want that to go away so we can actually interact with the rest of the page. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for it. So if the button contains, let's see, the text, and we're going to pass it in some text. Okay, so sorry about that. My computer just lagged out for a second. So we want to search for this text, right? If it has the button with the text not now. So if it has that, we're going to click on it. And that all goes into an array. So that's just some simple text. Okay, right. So I just looked up the documentation. It's at Puppeteer or pptr.dev if you guys want to look at it. So the $X is just there so that we can send in an expression, which is exactly what we wanted to do in this case instead of using query selector, because we just wanted to look for any button that had that text. So you can see right here, these are going to be the two main ones we use is query selector and query selector, all with these the $ and double $. I never really got around to learning jQuery, so this was all like pretty big learning step for me, so sorry about that. Okay, so now we're just gonna have our if statement, and we're gonna do, if we find anything with this text, so if the array is greater than 0, then we know that we found that. So right here, we're just going to click on the first element because it's gonna return us some jQuery, right? And then we're just gonna do console.log else no notification buttons to click. And that's just something you can see as we go along. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the user's page. We're just going to use that goto method again. So let's do https www.instagram.com. We're just going to inject that username variable that is passed to us on the API side of things. And then we're going to do wait until network idle 2. Okay. Next thing is we're just going to wait for 2 seconds just to give it some time to load. Now the next thing, we're going to click on the follower button because right now we're on the user's account page and there's going to be the follower button and the following button. So let's click on the followers first, and we're just going to use the jQuery selector, document query selector, and we're going to look for this specific element. And I'll kind of explain this in just a second. I mean, it's really just simple jQuery. Like I literally just looked at the HTML, and after some trial and error, I saw that this was the path I was looking for. So right here, why don't we break this out to a new line? That's easier to see. Okay, so header, and then we're gonna have section, and have UL, and then we're going to look for the list item with the nth child. And it's going to be the second one, and then we're going to click on that A link so that the actual followers notification box pops up. So obviously you can see that this will break really easily. or I mean, it's going to break immediately if they change any of these HTML paths. But the point of this is just to show you how you can do it. Like if you want to brute force it and scrape some data, that's just a risk that you have to be willing to take. So right here, you can see that we just used query selector to get us the node item, right? And then you use evaluate to actually resolve that promise, because this is always going to resolve a promise when you use this page document query selector. And then the follow-up that you have to do is you have to actually call this evaluate function so that you can do something with that node. And for this instance, we want to click on it, right? Okay, so the next thing, we need to wait for some more time, just so that it has some time to load. You can try taking these out. Maybe my computer's just slow, so that's why it mattered for me. But anyway, I had to give it some wait time because it wasn't loading fast enough. So right here, we're going to look for div with the role dialog because we want to go through the pop-up that appears now, and we want to actually iterate over all of the list items. So we're going to do div nth child. We're going to target the second one. And then after that, we're going to do page.wait for selector. And what this function does is it just makes sure that all the like this element actually exists on the page before we proceed further in our script. So this is a really nice built-in function that they provided for us, because the whole script will crash if we try to move on before this is actually there, or before this is actually loaded onto the page. Okay, and then the next part is I have a scroll down function, something that I saw on GitHub that just basically showed me how I could just keep scrolling endlessly through the page until there was no more items in the list to scroll through. So we're just gonna call that method right here, and we'll do it down at the bottom when we get to it. So let's see. Okay, so the next block of code we want to do is we want to actually iterate over the list, right? So we're going to do page dot query selector all. So find all of the elements or all the node items that match this query, or this element path. I'm not sure, whatever you call it. So I'm just going to pass it the path to all of the like follower region, to all the followers, like the surrounding container of it. So right here we do div nth child 2. We're going to do ul div li div nth child 2. Yeah, I know this is really boring. Like we're literally just like typing the paths to the elements, but this is just the way that it has to be. Okay, so this is gonna return all of the elements that match that path, and then right here we're going to create an array for the avatar paths, because one thing that we need to account for that I took me so long to figure out why I wasn't getting the avatars is their pictures in the list, right? It's gonna have different HTML if they have a story, because they have like that surrounding Instagram colored ring, and you can actually click on that icon for their profile, and their story will pop up for you. So we have to account for both of those different. What is it? What is it? Is it HTML path? I don't think that's what it what is the word that I'm looking for there? Like you know what I mean though, like the specific node nesting path on the DOM. So let's just account for both of those. So we got that one, and then the next one we're going to do div role equals dialog. again. And these look basically the same, so I'm actually just going to copy and paste this. Li div, and then instead right here, instead of an A, it's going to be a span. Okay, perfect. So now the next thing is just going to be basically the trickiest part of this whole thing. This took me so long to write, actually an embarrassing amount of time to write through this. I think like a couple hours to figure out how to do this. So we're going to map through the avatar paths, right? And we're going to use reduce because I need to, the way that this works is like, okay, well, let's write the code first, and then you'll understand, because it's kind of tricky to explain without the code. So right here, we're going to reduce through, we're going to start with the avatar paths, and we're going to, here, let's start with this. So we're going to start with the empty array, right? We're going to do promise.resolve, and the reason we do promise.resolve is because the functions that we call later on, the puppeteer functions, it's actually going to return us a promise. So we need to resolve them in this like iteration. Because if you read the documentation, the like evaluate functions return a promise. So right here we're going to do await accumulator promise. So this is going to give us the actual value that we need. And we start with promise.resolve on the array so that when we call this first await function, it's actually getting the literal array and not a promise that has that array nested within it. So right here we're going to do eval. And now what this lets us do, it's basically just a combination of document query selector and then getting the actual like contents of the promise, so that we can actually like do something with the HTML, like click on the button or something like that. So here we're going to do return the result, and we're going to map through it. And then we're just going to get some information. Because right now all we're trying to do is we're just trying to get all the actual pictures from the different like user blocks. So we're going to get the alt tag. And then I'm going to get some strings here because, let's see, what are we doing right here? Oh, right, because I want to get the username. And the username is actually in the alt tag, so I'm just going to do this like little regex right here to split it. Okay, we just need one right there. Okay, that looks good. And then we're going to know that it's at the first element in the array because it splits on that comma. And then we're going to do avatar, and this is going to do pic.get attribute source. Okay. Oh, I see. It's because I stupidly did not return an object. I tried to return it as JSX. So my bad. Just remove the parentheses right there. Okay, so now we should have all of the pictures right there. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually create the list for the followers. So why don't we do a map and do promise.all. This is going to look really ugly. And God, it's been so long since I've even looked at this code. It's like actually kind of hard to read. Okay, so we're going to go through the list of all of the users that we got right. And then we're going to get the property of inner text on the item because I think that should just have the username within it. Or it's going to. It's like just like a span or something that is just going to have the text value of the username. So that's how we're going to get the username. And then we're going to get the pic because we have a list of the pics, and we're going to just be able to filter it by username. So p.username equals username or avatar equals empty. So it's either going to be able to find the specific picture we're looking for this username, and if it doesn't, then just return a blank avatar. So right here we're going to do avatar await pic.avatar, and then we're going to do username. Okay. And then we need to wrap this in promise.all so that we can actually, like execute this double await right here. And this is just going to allow us to do await inside the map. That's why we have promise.all right there. So that makes a little more sense. Okay, so last, oh wow, we still have a ways to go, don't we? Okay, that's okay. We're like halfway there. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to do const close the button. And this is just going to close the actual page. Or this is just going to call the close button so that we can go on to the following pop-up window. Let's do div nth child. And then do button right there. And do await close button. So after we actually find that node, then we're going to evaluate it so we can actually do something with it. We're going to do click. Okay, const following button equals await page. So let's just do our query selector again, and let's look for this specific path. So I think what I'm going to do to kind of speed this up a little bit is to start copying and pasting these paths because they're actually really annoying to type down. So let me put that there. Okay. So that's that one. You can just pause the video and do that if you need to. And then we're going to do await following button dot evaluate, and then we're going to do button dot click. And this is exactly the same thing that we're doing. I mean, all you need to, most of what you're going to be doing with the library, at least for like web scraping, is you're going to use the query selector, right? And then you're going to evaluate it and do something with it. Okay, so we have that. Next thing, we're going to add in a wait so that the page actually has time to load through. Then we're going to do const following dialog. Now this is just going to be the pop-up window for who you're following. I'm going to copy and paste this again, just so I don't have to type that annoying page down. And then we're going to do wait for selector. And so again, this is going to wait so that we don't execute farther into the script if this isn't loaded. So I'm going to copy and paste that. And then we're going to call scroll down again so that we can actually scroll through the list of users and get all of them. Okay. So right here I'm going to do console.log for getting following so that when the script runs we can actually see what it's doing. Next thing is we're going to just create a second list, and it's going to be doing basically the same thing that we did in the first. So let me copy and paste that. And so this is just to get like all the actual items of the people that we're following, right? To get all those users. And then we're going to wait for that selector again because we don't want to go farther down if this dialog isn't present. Okay. Do this, and then get that. I'm going to do avatar paths one more time. I'm just going to copy and paste these paths because again, like I said, this is just so that we can get the user's profile picture every single time if they have a story or they don't have a story. Okay. So next thing we're gonna do is literally the same thing up there. I should have just like created this into its own separate function, I guess. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy and paste this too, just for the sake of time. So this is doing exactly what we did farther up. Yeah, I really should have just like created like separate methods for this. That would have made more sense. This is really ugly. Okay, and then I'm gonna copy and paste the next portion so that you can see, you know, us getting all of the pictures and then just getting all of the people that we're following. Okay. So just pause the video and do that. The next portion is going to be the follower count and the following count. So this is just so we can do some data with that. The portion after that is going to be, let us do this. So it's a little easier to read. My screen size is really small right now, so that the video quality isn't like absolutely horrendous. Okay, so this is going to get who's not following you and then who's not following them. So we're just going to filter and just find if there's any items that are not in either list, and that'll give us those counts. Okay, so then to put it all together, we're going to call browser.close, and that's going to kill the window that Puppeteer spawned for us. And then we're just going to return all of our variables for the data. So I'm just going to copy and paste that here. Okay, so that's all the statistics that we wanted to return for this API. And then the last portion that we're going to have is the scroll down function. So I'm actually going to copy and paste that as well right here, just so I don't have to type it, and just kind of tell you how it works. So all it does is it takes in whatever selector you're looking for in the page. It calls evaluate, and it just does a query selector, and it uses this promise in order to just find the height of the window and just keep scrolling until we've scrolled down the total height of the window. And it just does this on an interval, and just keeps resolving until we've met the height of the window. Okay, and then at the very end we just need module.export so we can actually use it in our API. So why don't we go over here, let's import our script. So let's do const script equals require dot script. And then we're going to scroll down a little bit, and I already have a path in this Webpack build set up for a proxy to be run when we want to actually find an API endpoint and get some data from our server. So I'm going to copy and paste this. You should just paste this in and it's going to work. All we did is we set up a GET route on our Express server. The proxy is behind this API subroute. And then it's called get data. It passes in a param for username. It's going to just tell us that we're starting the script, run the script, and pass the username to it, and then send whatever data we get back from this script. Okay, so with that, everything with our script should be done. So I mean, we're really close to being done here. Just bear with me a couple more minutes, and then we'll be done. Okay, so on our home page, under our client directory, that's where all of our React code lives. Let's do username and set username. And we're just going to bind this to some state so we can actually get that input working. And then we're going to do const on change. This is just going to be for an input box that we set up. So just keep following along right now, and it's going to make sense in just a second. So we're going to do set username to the value. So whatever they type into the input box, and then on click, I'm just going to actually copy and paste that in because it's a tiny bit of code. It's not really that much. I probably could just like type it in for you right now, but I'm feeling like pretty lazy. Okay, so right here, the only part we need is to just do console.log data. And we're just using the fetch API and getting the username from state. And this is going to route to our Express server and execute that script. And we're going to be good to go. So let's do an input. We'll give it value username, and then on change is going to equal on change. And then we're going to do button on click equals on click, and then we're just going to call it submit. Okay, so with that, why don't we try and run. And as always, we have some errors, so let's go and figure out where we need to look. So line 36 in our script. Let's get rid of that dot. Okay, and I did just get an error. So if you get like an error that has something to do with Babel, then just delete your node modules folder and delete package.lock.json, and that error should go away. I'm not sure if you guys are going to get it or not. Oh, and the reason that's not working is we have to do return here. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so let's write our returns, save, and let's try this one more time. Okay. I'm going to paste that in. Okay, we got our information again. Okay, perfect. So this time we actually got all the information we need. It gives us our avatars and our username of who is not following us and who we are not following. So to check this, okay, yeah, perfect. Because this person is not following me back, so we can see that it's right. And you could obviously like just do a quick check, but I promise it's right. I checked it. Okay, so cool. I know that was like dragging on basically after we got probably past the 20-minute mark. I know it's like probably really dry to watch, but I hope that this is useful just so you see an example of how you can use Puppeteer and really just how powerful and strong it is for purposes like this, for like scraping a website that you might have thought was unscrapable at some point, because I definitely did. I was like, wigging out for a really long time trying to figure out, okay, can I not get this data? Because there's no API for Instagram, which is really annoying, honestly. Like that's too bad, because Twitter has an API that you can use in order to get like certain metrics from them. So that's pretty cool. But Instagram doesn't really allow that. So in some cases, you just gotta make your own, which is what you can do here. Okay, so thanks a lot for watching. I hope this was helpful. Please, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. If the video sucks, if you found it helpful, just let me know, comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.